When you collaborate with an animator, you're collaborating with a personal view of another individual. And that clash of views is what creates a great collaboration. That complements but also challenge each other. It becomes like I call ping pong of ideas. And that is fundamental when you're doing an animation. In many ways, it's the same thing how you talk with an actor, how you talk with an animator. Because all the time you're talking about character and intent, and you're always also talking about movement. I remember when we were staging that scene of the hippogriff in the paddock, something that was very important with that character is the relationship between Harry and the hippogriff. It was to make it feel like, yes, a magical creature, but it's a magical creature that exists in that Hogwarts environment. We needed that hippogriff to be free, to run, to gallop. We wanted to have micro movements. The feathers, you should feel the feathers trembling with the air. You should feel the inertia, of the hippogriff stopping. And you have to feel how Harry is responding to that.
Well done, Harry. Well done, Buffy.
You had to feel that the relationship was tangible. As a director, you come with the original vision that you have for that. But what is fundamental is to have the people around you trust that are doing the animation, because they're going to come with ideas, because the animator understands perfectly well what is the purpose of this character in this specific scene. I tend to work in films that are more in a more realistic setting. And what is fundamental for those in those visual effects is the perfect integration. Visual effects should be invisible. With that baby, we did a lot of work leading to it, because it was kind of very complicated in the sense that there was a lot of interaction. Pretty much everything was interaction. So it had to be very, very well prepped, very well researched, because we wanted to be a realistic baby. And then it was this whole thing of how that baby was going to be handled. When I saw the baby finished, I could not believe it, because I was always a bit skeptical of how it was going to look. I think that baby, it was ahead of his days, but by far. And I felt bad because I didn't want to announce that that baby was a CG baby. Yeah, it was a mistake in the sense that animation work was kind of ignored. Nobody questioned it. Some people would say, wow, how did you put the baby there? Where were you hiding the baby? There were like a lot of questions like that, but nobody thought, oh yes, it was a visual effect baby. Nobody ever thought about that. When they have asked me, hey, would you like to do an animation film one day? I said, well, I have done one. Pretty much Gravity is an animated film. A good 80% of the film is animated, maybe more. We did a whole pass with the voices of the actors. And with that, animators, they have to be working, creating the performances. And then it was one of those cases in which it was the actors following the animators. There were so many scenes that Sandra knew, okay, I have to follow this. And she was incredible, replicating the timings that were already set by the animators. It was a very strange experience, because I don't know, I have never worked in another experience in which the actor is bonded to the animator. And yeah, it was a little bit of a nightmare, sometimes even the timings, because once that you had a change, you have to reprogram robots and computers and the whole visual effects, gimbals and stuff, because everything was connected. And that is another thing that is important about your collaborators. You need people who can have that flexibility to allow a certain room of change and improvisation. Because there's so much stuff that is so intangible. We aim as artists, and I'm talking artists, animators, visual effects, directors, and cinematographers, is to create what has never been created. I think that, like in anything else in cinema, it's all about imagination and finding new ways. And that just comes from humans, from the animators.